All right, here we go. Today we have lawyer Joe Tacopina, a.k.a. ASAP Joe, who has represented Donald Trump, Michael Jackson, Meek Mill, Alex Rodriguez, and most recently helping ASAP Rocky beat his gun case. Welcome to Vlad TV.
Thanks, Vlad. It's a pleasure to be here.
Listen, congratulations on your success, man. Quite a track record over the years.
Thank you, brother. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, a little bit of luck, and some grit, some character, some Brooklyn grit. So I appreciate it.
Well, I want to start in the very beginning. So you grew up in Brownsville, Brooklyn.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which, listen, I used to live in Flatbush. Brownsville always has been considered the roughest part of Brooklyn.
It still is the roughest part of Brooklyn.
Brownsville still is, right.
Brownsville.
It hasn't really changed much over the years.
Right. You know, you look at Bed-Stuy. Back then, Bed-Stuy was almost neck and neck with Brownsville. Brownsville was always a little bit more risque, a little dangerous. But now Bed-Stuy is one of the most fashionable places to live in New York City. Brownsville's still Brownsville. We only have a few bodegas in Brownsville, one great old Italian pizzeria that's still there, and that's all you got. There's nothing. I was there with one of the congresswomen in Brownsville trying to, still give back to the community a little bit, and drove around, and there's just nothing that looks any different than when I was a kid.
Well, you grew up with Italian immigrant parents. And at the time, was it mixed at all? Was it mostly black or mostly Italian, the area you lived in? Because every time I've gone through Brownsville, it's been almost all black.
It's all black. So here's what happened. It's a great story, actually. Brownsville, historically, and it's a great history there, was a place in the 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe early 60s that really were the home of Jewish and Italian immigrants. They were all migrated there. It was Jewish and Italian immigrants. As a matter of fact, you had that very famous mob killing arm called Murder Incorporated. It was based out of Brownsville, a little candy store in Livonia and Rockaway. Rose's Candy Store, which is still there. It's now a bodega, of course. But that's where, Albert Anastasia and all those guys, they basically had a hit squad of Jewish and Italian mobsters that would be launched to get a rival. And so it was a paid for sort of a by hire hit squad. And that's Brownsville. I mean, it was a lot of hardworking Jewish and Italian immigrants. And then like in the early 60s, the Italian and Jewish immigrants sort of moved out. And it became primarily an entirely black community. And it is an entirely black community. My parents apparently didn't get that memo. So they wound up staying in the same house on Mother Gaston, and until I was about 11, 12 years old. But they stayed there. And so I was literally the only white kid in the neighborhood at my school, but I didn't know any better. I just thought I was a light-skinned black guy, honestly. And in the summer, I wasn't even the lightest black guy. So it was, I just thought that's how it was. And so I grew up in that community, and they became sort of, part of my vibe, part of my upbringing. Again, for me, I'm colorblind, so it sort of helped me become, entrenched in a different culture. And then eventually we moved out to Sheepshead Bay, to Flatbush area in Brooklyn. But yeah, so I spent my formative years in Brownsville, and I would not trade it for the world, Vlad. I wouldn't trade it for the world because it gave me a grit and a character. There's a saying in Brownsville, I'm from the Ville, never ran, never will. And what that means is we don't have a fear gene. You just don't run from things. You don't run from problems. You don't run from people. And that upbringing gave me a lot. It gave me a lot of things that I tap into today in life and in the well of a court specifically. So I think what Brownsville helped me do was remove the fear gene from my body. So it's a life experience, that's for sure.
Well, you and Mike Tyson are the same age.
2 blocks away. He was on Amboy. I was on Mother Gaston. He was 2 blocks away.
Did you ever see him growing up?
I don't know. I don't know. I saw him when he was 18 up in the Catskills several times. But I don't know if I ran into him or not. I mean, I never got robbed by him, so I don't know. I mean, I know that's what his big move was, but I don't recall seeing Mike. Mike and I have since talked about Brownsville and where he lived and where I lived and all that stuff, but I don't remember seeing him growing up. But, there was a lot of guys who were pretty tough like Tyson there.
Okay, what were you doing in the Catskills at 18?
So I went to Skidmore College, which is right in Saratoga, which is up there. The Catskills is not too far away. My uncle was Al Certo. Al Certo was one of the legendary boxing trainers in the United States history. Graziano, Jake LaMotta, Buddy McGirt, and all the way up. And so Cuss D'Amato was Mike's trainer, and Alan Cuss had a great relationship. Two old Italian guys, bouncing around. So when Mike was really becoming Mike, my uncle took me up there to see him train, and we talked and we met, and he was still a raw young teenager. Clearly was a beast and had some potential that I've never seen before. And we started talking about the good old days, which was not that long ago when we met. So, yep.
I mean, growing up in that high crime environment, did you ever get into any legal trouble, ever get arrested, or were you generally a good kid?
No, I was the victim of many things. Look, I had to fight my way to school every day. Literally had to fight my way to school every day. My parents didn't have a lot. They gave me everything they could. They were two of the greatest human beings ever, and they gave me what they could give me. But, going to school, walking to school there, it was a tough journey every day because if I had a lunchbox, sometimes they would steal my lunchbox. If I had a quasi-new pair of sneakers, I'd go to school in socks, because they'd take my shoes. And, my mother started getting wise to it, so she'd give me a paper bag for lunch instead of a lunchbox. She'd put, orange rinds in there and broken eggshells in there and put my sandwiches in my pocket. So because there was a point in time where I was getting my lunch stolen every day, I'd come home, my mom's like, "You look skinny, you're not eating very well, are you?" I'm like, No, I'm good. She's like, "You're not eating your lunch. What did I make you for lunch yesterday?" And I was like, "A bologna sandwich?" She goes, "No, I didn't. I made you provolone." I was like, she goes, "Where's your lunch?" And then I had to tell her what happened. And she's like, "Oh, we'll get them." So she started putting my sandwich in my pockets and gave me a decoy bag, to bring to school to get stolen. So it was like I went through that stuff, but it was tough. I never got in trouble as a kid, arrested. My parents the law would have been the least of my problems. If I had gotten in trouble, my mother would have taken care of the rest. So I can't, I fortunately did not cross paths with the law in that regard.
Okay, so you go to college and then you go to law school. You go to University of Bridgeport. And did you know you wanted to be a lawyer the whole time?
No. In college, I wanted to be a professional hockey player. As a matter of fact, I got a hockey scholarship, and I set an NCAA record in hockey, and it was a notorious record, but a record nonetheless. And I had a cup of coffee in the AHL with the Springfield Indians, the Islanders farm system, where I was invited there as a non-drafted signee. I thought, really hockey was my life. I was an athlete. I was a New York State wrestling champion in high school. I was captain of the football team, but also hockey was really my passion. And I really thought I was going to be a professional hockey player. Okay. I'd still be trying to, toiling around in buses in the minors if that ever happened. And I got wise to the fact that I really didn't have that skill set at the end of the day to make it to that level. But in college, something happened to me. I was in the debate club. And in the debate club, and I was a decent student, but I didn't apply myself like I did because I was so focused on athletics, which is as much of the maturation and educational process as academics, by the way, to me anyway. So what happened was the debate professor said to me after a few debates over certain things that he saw me, he said, "You'd be a great trial lawyer. You're really good at debate." I'm like, "Trial lawyer? No one in my family went to college." I said, "I can't be a lawyer." I said, "I guess it shouldn't be on the stars. I can't do that stuff." And he said, "Well, don't sell yourself short. You could do it." And I just thought you had to have contacts to be a lawyer. I thought you had to know someone. So he really gave me inspiration. I thought about it. He said, just take the LSATs, take the law school entry exam. Why not? Then I got serious, and I started working hard, and I did take it. I passed it on the first time and went to law school. And it was at that point that I started thinking, I read a book, Vlad. I've read a book by Joe McGinnis. Joe McGinnis is a true crime author. He's a legendary true crime author. And it's not just crime. He does nonfiction, but folks did a lot of great true crime books. And he recently passed, but he was a legend in the field, Joe McGinnis. And he wrote a book called Fatal Vision. And Fatal Vision is a book that became a movie and other things. It's about a Green Beret sergeant from the 1970s in Fayetteville, North Carolina, an Army Green Beret sergeant who was accused of murdering his wife and 2 children in the house. He claimed hippies broke in. They were looking for drugs because he was a surgeon, a doctor, and they stabbed him. He had some defensive puncture wounds, but they were bludgeoned and murdered. And everyone was behind him at the time. He identified one of the intruders. Someone saw someone matching that description not too far away. And anyway, long story short, he was the victim until he became the suspect. And that happened over the course of years. And the book was fascinating to me. So I was reading the book, and I was like, wow. And one page I'd be like, oh, this guy's innocent. Next page I'd be like, oh, he's guilty. He's innocent. He's guilty. I was like, I've never read a book so intently at that point in my life. And then there was a trial, 2 trials, one with the Army JAGs, which, didn't go off so well. It was, a bit of a mockery, they say. And then the feds took it over when the father of his wife, the deceased wife, really pushed for some intervention, really a full, thorough investigation, because this guy had done his homework, the father. It became his life's mission to get justice for his daughter. The feds took it on. He was eventually convicted. Jeffrey McDonald is, Captain Jeffrey McDonald. It's a famous story, about the Army Green Beret who's in jail. And so he's still in jail. And they made movies out of it. There's been documentaries out of it. And that's inspired me. I said, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. I want to be a trial lawyer. I want to do that. So that's what got me going.
Okay, so you graduate law school and you start out on the prosecution side.
Correct. There were a few reasons. I've always wanted to be a defense lawyer. When I read that book, I was like, that's my calling. I want to cross-examine witness. And then I started reading transcripts, like cold, just give me trial transcripts. I was devouring them. I'd stopped watching sports for a few years just to really immerse myself in that. There was a lawyer named Edgar Bennett Williams from Washington, D.C., wound up owning part of the Redskins, or principal owner of the Redskins at one point. And there was a book on him called The Man to See. Edgar Bennett Williams, to anyone who's a lawyer knows, he was a legendary, he was a giant of the bar. He was really one of the great trial lawyers of all time. And anyone who had a problem of any importance went to see Edgar Bennett Williams. I read that book and I was like, that's what I have to be. So I figured, let me go into the prosecution first to learn how they operate, how they think. I had an opportunity there. They hired me. I tried every case, Vlad. I tell you, any case I could get my hands on, cases people didn't want. I opened up cold cases that were dead for 20 years. I took them to trial. Anything I could do to get in front of a jury. I didn't care if it was a traffic ticket case. I would do. I wanted trial experience, and I wound up getting a lot of trial experience. I had like 40 trials as a district attorney, as a prosecutor in almost 4 years, and I prevailed at 39. And so I started out 0-1, by the way. So I went on a streak after that. But it was something it clearly became a calling to me, because something happened in a well of a courtroom, and something does happen in the well of a courtroom to me when those doors close and you're in that well and the bell rings. It's like I become like an idiot savant of trial. Like my intellect goes up significantly. My awareness goes up, like to a degree where I could feel anything happening in court. I understand dynamics. It's something that I can't really explain, but I've developed it over years. Look, you and I sit and talk, and if we were in a bar, Vlad, I mean, okay, I'm not a dumb guy, but my intellect is average. I think it's quasi-pedestrian, smart, but I don't think I'm necessarily the smartest human being around. But that being said, when I'm in a courtroom, something happens to me where I feel like I am a supreme being in there, and my results do speak for themselves. I'm not trying to be cocky; it's just a fact I'm stating. And long story short is that's where I'm comfortable, and that's what definitely my calling was. I love speaking to people. I can speak to jurors, who are presidents of the United States, or I can speak to jurors who are, part of a janitorial staff somewhere. They're all the same thing. I treat everyone the same. I grew up that way, so I'm able to relate. I've tried cases against Harvard lawyers, and the funny part is I teach at Harvard Law School now, but I tried cases against Harvard lawyers in the past. And some of them, I eat their lunch, Vlad, because not that they're not smart, they're brilliant, but they speak above people. They don't speak to the everyday person, and they have trouble connecting. I use that to my advantage. So I like to think I could sort of address people in whatever walks of life they come from, because I could relate to any walk of life, and I've been there. So it's something that I really enjoy doing.
So why did you switch over from the prosecution side to the defense side?
Well,
and go private practice?
2 reasons. One, I wanted to always be a defense lawyer. Like when you're a prosecutor, you rarely get to cross-examine people. I really wanted to do cross-examine. I just read hundreds and maybe thousands of transcripts by this time on cross-examination. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. I knew I was going to be good at that. As a prosecutor, you rarely get to cross-examine people, especially important witnesses. Most defendants do not testify in criminal trials for good reason, even innocent ones. Prosecutors are supposed to win. their jobs are a lot easier, and most of the time what you're doing is basically saying, and then what happened next, sir? And what happened next? And what happened next? There's not a lot of skill in that. I mean, there was a lot of skill in putting an investigation together, and I used to be part of that, obviously, doing an opening statement, doing a summation, which I thrived in. But I wanted a little bit more. That was one reason. The second reason was I had 2 kids at the time, and we were, struggling to make ends meet. I had student loans, and a government salary, a civil servant salary, was starting to become, an issue. So I had to start making some real money. I had to start paying back student loans. I had to, make some money at one point. So it was a decision that I was never going to be a career prosecutor. That's not for me. As I often joke, I consider myself a recovering prosecutor right now. And so I did it for 3.5+ years. And then I made the move.